Welcome to this happy podcast. Welcome. This is Planning the Magic, the podcast where we discuss all things Disney vacation planning. I'm Jake.
And I'm Alma, and today we have a special guest with us who's going to chat all about the services available at Disney parks for guests with disabilities. So Jenn is an expert on this topic and has personally experienced with not only Disney World, but Disneyland and also Disneyland Paris. So Jenn, please take a moment to introduce yourself and let the people know where they can find you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jenn. I am a mom of 3 little kiddos, one who has autism spectrum disorder, and then 2 other little girls, one who's currently awaiting diagnosis. So I have lots of experience using the DAS Pass at Disney to help accommodate our family when we visit the parks. You can also reach me through either Enchanted Vacations website or on Facebook and Instagram, Jenn with Enchanted Vacations.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put all the links down in the show notes or the YouTube description so you can work with Jenn if you have any questions especially about the special needs services. So I'm really excited to have you here today because it's something I'm not that familiar with. You know, I know a little bit about it, but you can always know more. And so I'm really excited to hear more about this today. So why don't you start by just kind of telling us like some of your experience, maybe, starting at the parks, and then I know you've been on a cruise as well. So some of the kind of the features, the high level overview, and we'll dig down a little deeper as we go.
Yeah, so we mostly use it in the parks for sure. We have only done one cruise as a family together, so my experience is definitely more park orientated. But it's first off, it's an amazing service. Absolutely like game changer. Visiting prior to having kids, I didn't even know it was a thing, and I think a lot of people don't realize that this is a service that Disney offers. It's totally like a little sort of hidden thing. It's becoming more well known, luckily, but it wasn't very well known before. So after having my kiddos and then my son getting his diagnosis, going to Disney and having those extra layers of, like sensory and just different things that he has to go through, it was super overwhelming trying to navigate that. And once learning about sort of the disability pass, it was a huge thing. So what it does is it basically helps guests wait outside of the line. So when you are seeing a ride wait time and it has a return time of, we'll say an hour, 60 minutes, instead of standing in that 60-minute line, you get to go onto the app and you will make a selection for that ride and it'll give you a return time. Usually it's like 5 or 10 minutes actually less than the 60 minutes, but then you can wait and do whatever, go on some other rides, walk around, whatever you choose, and then you come back and you can redeem it. It's very similar to Genie Plus. You redeem that and you get to go through either if it's a Lightning Lane ride, you go through Lightning Lane. If it's just regular with no Lightning Lane, you go through the exit. Kind of depends on the ride. It's super, super handy. It works the same at Disney World, Disneyland. Disney Paris was a little bit different, but it honestly is an amazing feature just for the factor, for like my son especially, he doesn't do well standing in, heat with lots of people. It's super loud, it's very stimulating. And he's a very go, go, go kid too. So, it's hard for him to just sit still. A lot of his stims have to do with like movement. So for our family, when we, book these rides, we get to go while we're waiting and we get to go walk around. He gets to see things, we get to go if he needs a quiet moment, we can go do that. So it is a feature that is absolutely like we wouldn't do the parks the way we do them. It would be totally different experience if we didn't have that feature. I don't even know if we would be able to, be in the parks for as long, do the rides that we do. My son loves to do all of that, but having to navigate, standby lines, it's a hard thing. So experience, this pass is a very just a life-changing thing for families who need it for sure.
Yeah, so the service available is it's called Disney Accessibility
Service.
Service. So in short, people call it the DAS Pass.
Yeah.
But that's not the only, well, that's the main thing available for guests with disabilities. But there's also, you mentioned sneaking away to sort of quiet locations. There are special segregated sections that can get you, out of the noise. Is that right? Or is that something that you just know personally?
It's something that I just know personally. So I know that like at Universal, for example, they have quiet like rooms, sensory rooms. Certain parks have that. At Disney, we've sort of figured out our own areas of the parks that are like very sort of quiet, sensory friendly because they're low stim, that kind of thing. So I actually have a list for clients of sort of areas that like we go to, just to sneak away, or even just areas that I don't find like a lot of people utilize, and it's just like it might not be as quiet, but there's more space, like my son can kind of just like get his all his wiggles out and everything and whatnot. So those are some things that I like to send out to clients I know that have kids who, or just themselves, who need those sort of quiet areas or spacious areas.
Yeah, I think I might hit you up on those tips
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah, yeah, it's honestly I need that too sometimes. I'm like, I am overstimulated.
I mean, that really can make a big difference. I know my daughter has at least noise sensitivity issues, and so definitely in the parks can be very overstimulating for her too as well. And so, I know we find those quiet spots to
Yeah.
go to that can just kind of go unwind and relax, and it makes a huge difference of making it through a whole park day.
For sure, absolutely. Like we've done it just on our January trip to Disneyland, which was like the kickoff to the 100. So we did see like a lot of crowds, coming in and whatnot. But it was hard. Like we didn't find some of those quiet areas were pretty packed during that trip compared to other times that we've gone. And like my son was like, he never usually like he'll just stay. Like he'll stay. He wants to just go on rides and run around and typical kid stuff, right? But when he gets too built up, he shuts down. And by like 11:30, he was like shutting down, like, I want to leave, which is super unlike him. So we were definitely like very surprised by that, but super thankful that, we have a lot of knowledge to be able to like, okay, let's try to find some of like, very, very tucked away quiet spots and just like tuck away for like 45 minutes, that kind of thing. And it totally helps. I mean, it's not a total reset for him, but it definitely brings him down. And I'm sure it's the same with lots of other kids and families too. Just getting that reset time is so important.
So we have Gas Pass, and you say it kind of works like Genie Plus. Can you kind of elaborate on how it works? Does it work for your whole family? Like how would you go about getting it?
So it works. You have to register for it. So unfortunately, that's something guests I think that I can do for them. We can't as TAs. It has to be done. The person who's going to be the DAS holder. So for like my family, it's my son. If down the road, because I mentioned my daughter is in the process of diagnosis, if she got diagnosed, she could also get her own DAS pass. So she would have to register as well. So depending on the family, there could be one or there could be multiple. But whoever's going to be the actual primary DAS holder, they have to be present for the registration phone call. So if they are a child, it's most likely going to be the parent or grandparent who signs on to their Disneyland account. Then you're going to go, there's a link for the actual disability access service page. If you scroll down, you can click on, register with a cast member, and you can go on, and it's a video call. So you'll start with just a chat on the Disneyland page, and then you'll get bumped into a video call with a cast member. They will have to see the child. So if it's a younger child, they can just pop in, they'll get a picture of them just for the record. If it's an older child, I have heard that they do like to chat with them if they're willing to chat. If not, the parent can take over, but it kind of depends on the situation. Once you're registered, they go through some questions with you. It is kind of, a case by case basis. There isn't like a general, every guest with this gets approved. It is, you do talk about the reasons. You kind of have to explain why you yourself or your child will benefit from sort of the waiting outside of the line feature, what that will do for them, what your experience in the park, if they did have to wait in line looks for. Those are kind of the questions we've been asked in the past. Once you go through it, if you're approved, you'll go back to just chatting, and they'll give you sort of some pre-selection rides. So it's limited. not all of the rides are available, but they'll give you, a bunch of them. You get to choose for each day, you get to choose two of those rides to pre select. So it's kind of a jump because DAS works a little bit different than Genie Plus. You have to scan into the ride to make your next selection. So Genie Plus, you can do the 2 hour and kind of stack. DAS, you have to, scan in and then you can book your next one. So doing the pre registration phone call and everything and chat, you get those 2 bonus rides per day to like start off with, which is really nice and beneficial. Um, and then once you've done all that, it gets registered into your account. And then when you're at the parks, once you scan in, it's similar to Genie Plus. Once you've scanned in, you can start making your next DAS. So if you do the pre-selection, you'll have 2 already in your account. And then when you scan in, you can make a third one right off the get-go. So even if you have 2 for later in the day, you can make another one and then keep going with that one. Once you scan in, book your next one. Once you scan in, book your next one and keep going. It's all done on the app. So if you have any familiarity with Genie Plus, it's basically the same process. You just go to the ride that you're looking for and you can click on it. It'll show the disability and you can click redeem. It'll show you what time. Everything is very, very straightforward. I actually have a little video tutorial as well for clients just on like what it looks like. But it's very easy. They made it very user friendly, I feel like, anyways. And it's not very hard to. I think it's less confusing than Genie Plus because you don't have to worry about like the 2 hours. I think, it's just like, okay, book, scan, book, scan. It's pretty straightforward. For people who are like very low tech and don't have time to do the pre selection, you can still go to City Hall and you can get it done the first day of your trip, but you won't get those 2 pre selections per day. So you kind of lose out on that. But some people don't want to waste the time to register. So depends on the situation.
Now, with those
Yeah.
pre-selections, are they just any time to use throughout the day, or is there a certain time that you kind of pre-register for?
So they'll give you sort of for each day. So you can start registering from 30 days out from your trip up to 2 days out. So if you start at the 30-day mark, you'll have more options. If you register closer to your date, there'll be less, but they'll give you, I don't know what their like amount is. I'm assuming they have X amount that they can dole out, but basically they'll give you, okay, the list of rides. You say we want to do, Goofy Sky School and Midway Mania. And for example, then they'll say, okay, on, July, whatever, this is the times we have available for those 2 rides. You pick the rides and then they load them in. So you don't have as much flexibility to like pick, I guess, what would be ideal for you. It's sort of what's available. But if you go for the 30-day out, there usually is lots of times to choose from. So you can choose, morning or afternoon or whatever. Usually for us, I like to just have them done for sort of the evening because I know that's when we always like rope drop and go early. So it's nice to have a couple things like pre-done for later in the day. So that works for us.
Yeah, speaking of things booking up, are there limitations on the DAS pass? Like, will there be rides unavailable throughout the way? Will there be rides unavailable throughout the day at any point, or will you always have access?
There's always access. So it is like it does work for, Rise of the Resistance, Radiator Springs. You can book those. The only time you can't book anything is if it's down. Otherwise, everything's open, everything's available. We've never encountered any times where it hasn't been. The only issue well, not issue, but the only time that it was ever different was when Mickey and Minnie opened up and we had to still get into the virtual queue and get a spot. And then when we went to go for our time, instead of going into the virtual queue like standby line, we went and showed them like we had a disability service and they put us through the lightning lane entrance instead. So that was a little bit different, but every other ride works the same. I don't know about Tron. Actually, that's the only one I don't know. I think it's might be different. I've heard different things, but I haven't experienced that myself, so I don't know for sure.
Now, there are some rides that you cannot pre-select, right? Everything's available once you get into the park,
Oh,
but at
yeah.
least there's a handful in each park that
Yes, yeah.
are not available for pre-selection.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so they give you off the top of my head, like I know in California Adventure, like you can choose from, I mean, it's it's a good selection, like Web Slingers, like Goofy's, Midway Mania, Soarin', sort of all those in Disneyland, like Buzz Lightyear, Matterhorn, Big Thunder. It's quite a good list. There's a few, like you can't do Rise, you can't do Radiator, sort of like none of the individual Lightning Lane, can't do those. But it is still like a good chunk.
Can you do the individual lightning lanes day of, though, with Gas
Yeah.
Pass?
Yeah. So once you're in the park,
And
yeah.
do you still have to
Yeah.
purchase the individual lightning lane for that? Nope. That's
No.
nice.
No.
Yeah.
It is
Wonderful.
very nice. Yeah. It is for sure a plus.
So just to be clear, you don't have to pay for Gas Pass, right?
No. No.
No.
No. It's all just a register, and like I said, it's like a case by case, so they'll chat with you directly and then approve or deny based on your situation.
So I know you said there's no sort of general why they approve and why they don't approve, but who overall is this service for? Like, who can use this service?
So it is based for, cognitive disabilities. So, like I mentioned with my son with autism, there is, obviously other, sensory processing like PTSD, different kinds of things I've seen approved. The whole purpose of it is, it's not mobility based. People who have mobility issues, Disney does offer different solutions. If you're in a wheelchair or scooter, those kinds of things, different ways to get through the lineups. This is more for people who can't tolerate being in the physical line due to sort of other stimulation, whether it's noise or, the crowding. Like for my son, he gets really, really anxious being around that many people. And it becomes just, he's still little. So, managing those expectations combined becomes really difficult. And, outbursts and meltdowns are more frequent, and it just doesn't work. He can't do it. We just can't force somebody to do it, and so he wouldn't be able to experience those things. So it is, specifically designated for those people who would not be able to tolerate the ride lineups without this service. So, and like I said, you're not skipping the line. I think a lot of people think it's just this instant, oh, we get this, we're going to skip through all. You don't. You still have to wait. You're just waiting outside the line. So, if it's a 70-minute wait, like I said, there's usually like just like Genie Plus, a 5-minute ish window, but you're still going to be waiting over an hour. You can just do it standing or eating or whatever somewhere else. So, yeah.
It's like a virtual line.
Yeah, basically.
I know sometimes you see those people just coming in the exit and you're thinking, hey, what are you, how do I get to do that? But they've already waited.
Yes.
They've just not waited in the queue with
Yes.
everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. And that kind of, I feel like, kind of segues into like a whole other topic. There's a lot of, I think, maybe not discrimination, but a lot of people have their, preconceived notions when they see people entering through the exit, like you said, like, why did they get to do that? Like, how are they doing that? Like, I want to do that. And, for a lot of cognitive disabilities, that kind of, there is no physical signs, not all the time anyways, of what's going on. So, we've seen it where people giving us like dirty looks. People have tried to block us from like going through. Different things like that, where I get it. People, they stand in line. It is frustrating. Sometimes you just, I want my turn. You want to just get through. But, people don't realize that, we did wait. We're just didn't do it in the conventional way. And again, this isn't like a service that is this like instant gratification. It is something where we still do our time and whatnot. But I think there is a lot of people who do judge, and that is hard. It is hard to see that because, especially when you have a kid. Like, I'm a mama bear, I get very protective. I don't want people saying anything and whatnot. So it's hard to deal with that sort of the looks and the guilt that you feel. I feel guilty sometimes. Like, people are looking at me and I feel like bad for going through, even though I know we did everything right, but it's tough.
On
It's
the flip
hard.
side of that, though, I feel like Disney as a company does a fantastic job of being very accommodating and helping out, not just in the parks, but across the whole Disney product.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had nothing but just like compassion and care and just everything from Disney. They're always just top notch. And that's why, like I say to, any guests or clients who are debating between different, companies, suppliers, products, like Disney is the one that will, I know from experience, will take care of you, and they care. They 100% care. And I've seen cast members, like politely and gently explain to other guests who are like irate about, oh, like why are they going through the exit, politely, and put them in their place and stuff. And they don't stand for people being mean or whatnot if they
Discrimination.
see it, discrimination. So it's really nice, you do feel like Disney has your back, which is amazing.
Yeah, I know Jen and we've talked about this topic many times, and you did point out a big difference between Disneyland Paris and the parks here in North America, and I do want to touch base on that. But I think the reason that maybe people are looking at you like you're skipping the line is because some people are taking advantage of this service. So it's hard for people, or those people, to see that happening. And now they just assume that if they can't tell that it's an obvious reason why they need the DAS pass, then they quickly assume that they're misusing it. So do you feel like that kind of is a
Yeah.
reasoning behind that
Yeah.
somewhat?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, as someone who's in tons of Disney groups and Facebook groups, I can't even count how many times I've seen people ask about DAS and talk about like misusing it, just from fellow like travel agents, hearing stories. It is once DAS became sort of like it's great. It's more well known. It's, becoming more something that people know about. So it's helping lots of families who need it. But on the flip side, it's also, you see like TikToks and, reels and like how to skip lines. And, there's tour companies, that claim they're VIP, do these things, and they're using the DAS pass like for themselves to get other people through. So there is totally, these people that are basically ruining it, for the people who need it, which is incredibly frustrating. I've had people even ask me, as a TA, like how do I get that for myself with no reason for it. So it's hard, especially as a parent of a child who does need it, um, to see that, because if they took away this service, it would be devastating. And I don't, um, like I said to Alma before, when we went to Disneyland Paris, it was a totally different experience. And I think that their methods could be implemented maybe in North America, and it would be a way of cutting back on the people who are misusing it. Um, but I don't know if North America will do that. Maybe. So
Why don't you touch base a little bit on what that difference is? What was your experience like at Disneyland Paris?
So at Disneyland Paris, it was way stricter. They were super on top of actually verifying the disability. So for us, we had to show my sons, like each country had a list of different things that you could show to prove the disability itself. So in Disneyland Paris, I believe it works a little bit different too. It's not just cognitive, it is also, they have their disability, it's like a priority card, disability priority card. I think, I can't remember exactly the name, but it basically has like three different tiers to it. So you get color coded. When you apply, you have to answer like a bunch of questions, like, is your disability mobility based, is your disability cognitive? Like they go through this whole questionnaire that you fill out everything, and then you have to bring proof with you to the park. If you're at a hotel, we did it at our hotel, but you bring proof, you choose your country, it'll show you what you can bring to show that you have the disability, or your child has the disability that you said that they have. And then based on that proof, they will approve you, and based on your questionnaire, they will issue you a card. It's even got like, I have it still, my son's like picture on it and his name, and it's got a little color coded so it shows what level he is. For he's super super mobile, too mobile. So he had no problem going through rides, but for him it was just the cognitive waiting in line. So he got his color, whereas other people who were in wheelchairs or whichever. They would get different colors, and it sort of would change how you would get support. So for my son, when we were there, it worked very similar to DAS. Here, we didn't need to use the app though. We would just go up to a ride, they had little check-in like front areas or at the exit, whichever, and you would show the card, and they were supposed to tell you a return time. Honestly, it was really quiet when we were there, so every ride was just go for it, go on. So we basically were just going through. But from what I gather, they are able to give you a little return time on a sheet, and then you would come back. So it was really different because it felt like everybody who was there who was using it was sort of like verified in a way, which was totally different. But I didn't feel like we ever experienced any like negative looks, which was also very different. Like it felt like everybody was aware, like, okay, there's a reason that they're, going through the line. Everybody kind of was like on the same page. I think that was super cool. I don't know. I think it's hard because not everybody has proof. Sometimes you're like awaiting a diagnosis, or, some kids, you can't get them in. Like we're still waiting for, appointments for my daughter. Things are long waits. So I get that it could be hard to kind of navigate that bridge where, you don't have proof, but they have XYZ's reasons to use DAS. So it is kind of like a tough thing to navigate. But I did really appreciate that, you know, it felt like over there they really were like making sure nobody was just saying like, I have, and trying to get it. It was like a full process. We had to make sure we brought everything. We had to apply, and like they checked, like they weren't just like, they were like checking to make sure like our paper said like my son's name and like our name and everything. So it was like a very much more, I don't know, invasive deal over there, but it was
At least more
good.
rigorous.
It worked really well. Yeah, very much so.
Nice. I mean, I think part of that too might just be kind of a cultural difference between, the countries, which, it is what it is, not necessarily a bad thing. Although in this case, maybe it is, but
Yeah.
you know, I was just in Disneyland, Tokyo Disneyland earlier this year, and same thing too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just, it's, yes, it's a Disney park, but it's also just culturally so different being there, and it is really fun to kind of see those
Yeah.
differences. But it's also nice to see that how well they
Yeah.
handle. I don't have firsthand experience of the Tokyo Disney, DAS pass or accessibility issues, but just overall, I thought the international parks are run so well.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. It was like a super cool experience to see just like another type of Disney, the cast members and everything and just the vibe. I'm not sure Tokyo's on our list for Disney, but I know Paris, some of the cast members, it was it was a really different experience interacting with them. I'm so used to like our bubbly like North American cast members, and Paris was like very monotone and not as
Oh,
bubbly.
Tokyo's totally the other way. They are way more like
Yeah,
excited.
overly
Yeah.
bubbly.
Even like the janitors are dancing during the
That's
parades
cool.
and stuff. They're getting you all hyped up.
That's so funny. I was, like, yelled at by a cast member when we were in Paris, and it was, like, traumatizing because I pride myself on, like, following Disney's rules, and this cast member was so mad at me. I had my phone for, like, Space Mountain, and I was just used to, like, the pockets that you can, like, tuck stuff in, and I thought, like, "Oh, they'll have, like, that on the Space Mountain," but they did not, and so I didn't have anywheres for my phone to go, so I just, like, was gonna tuck it in my sleeve and, like, bunch my sleeve up and like hold it, and this cast member, he like physically like lifted up like the bar that goes over your head. He was like, "You can't do that, like it's gonna fly out." He was like yelling at me. Everybody was looking at me. I was like, "I don't have anywhere to put this," and he just like he was so mad. He was like, "Fine." He's like, "It's gonna just like fly out of there, like watch, it's gonna happen." He slammed it down on my head, and then he just sent us. Like he was like, "Just go," and we were gone. And it was so different. I was not used to that.
Yeah.
You're like put out in a timeout for that.
I felt, yeah. I didn't look at him when I got off. I was like, "Ooh, don't look."
Did you wave your phone?
I did kind
Still
of
got
like,
it.
like it's here, it's still here, but yeah, it was very embarrassing. So that was, and I feel like in North America, you would never see like they don't yell like that. Like this guy was like yelling. They have stern voices, in North America, but this guy was like full out not having it.
Well, I want to take a step back for a minute and talk about for traveling, as a whole family together, especially for using a DAS pass, who all can go along with, so obviously there's the person who qualifies for the DAS pass, but is there a
Yeah.
limit to how many people they can take with them, or how does that work?
Yeah. So there is, in North America, they say it's like 6 other guests. That being said, I have heard different cast members say say different things. So I'm not sure exactly, if it's just kind of one of those you have to talk to the right cast member and you'll get, but we've traveled with grandparents, so we're a family of 5, and then grandparents, that was a group of 7, and we had everybody was able to be on the DAS. I did talk to the cast member like, "Hey, we're gonna have this many people." Um, she was like, "That's fine," and she just put it through. But I have also had other cast members that said like, "No, like 6 is max. That is it. Like you cannot add anymore." So typically, for immediate family, it does, cover, I think, most people. Obviously, when you start to get like large groups, it's not going to cover like, a party of 10 or 12 or, like your cousin's cousin and stuff like that. And I think that's part of too where, some of the flack for DAS, because you have these people who are abusing it, and they're having like 3 members of their party so that they can get like 21 of them all through, which is obviously not good. But yeah, I mean, it works. It should cover majority of the people. In Disneyland Paris, it was capped at like 5 people, so that was their max, and they were strict because I met up with a coworker and we tried to see if they could like come with us, and they were like, "No, it's 5 people." So they were very strict over there. From what I gather here, it is strict when you're in the parks, like only the people who are linked to the DAS can use it. We've never tried to have anybody else come with us, but yeah, so there is a limit. You can't just have everybody join you.
You can't win friends over that way.
You can't.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to cruises, near and dear to my heart. It's one of the things I love. So I know they do a great job on the ships as well for Disney Cruise Line. What's been your experience? They don't have ride queues or anything like that you need to worry about, but how do they make things better on the ships?
So yeah, that was one of my biggest sort of concerns. We just did the Disney Wonder to Alaska, and it was 7 days. I was a little nervous because it was our first time, taking 3 kids, but taking my son and seeing how everything was going to go. So I did a lot of chatting with cast members on the phone. I probably bugged them, asking like a million questions, prior to going and whatnot. But overall, like there was no reason to ever even like have a slight concern. They were phenomenal. Like you said, there's no rides, so really there isn't, a lot of like queues that you're waiting for or anything like that. So the only time we ever experienced waits was character wise, and none of the cast members ever had issues with, like myself or my husband or grandma, grandpa, like waiting and us like running the kids up and down the hallway or anything like that. We always checked in and kind of like, hey, like we're this many people, but like, is it okay? And like everybody was like, totally fine. And just really great. I also found, like the servers, when you're on a Disney cruise, as you guys know, like you get the same servers through your whole dining rotation, and they were amazing. Like we explained, a bit about my son and, like dietary preferences, for both 2 of my kids are like extremely challenging. So my daughter literally only ate like one type of noodle on the cruise for every meal. And our server learned very quick, and he would, make sure it was all ready to go like before we even came. And my kids like only eat steamed carrots. They won't eat like the other steamed vegetables. So they always like separated, all they had it all just like ready to go. Um, so that was super amazing because food is a big deal for us too. So one of the things I love about being in the park is, there's options. Whereas like a cruise, I wasn't sure how we would handle. But they were so accommodating with making sure, like when I told them, like, hey, like they're only going to eat the carrots, like they only brought carrots from then on. And she's only going to eat this noodle and like no cheese, and like every time was, they knew it, they remembered. it was great. And honestly, like every single cast member we interacted with, everybody on the ship was just so welcoming, so, no pressure. A lot of the things that my son struggles with is, he doesn't like to talk, doesn't has a lot of anxiety. Um and all the characters were just, they took their time, like they got down to his level. At the start of the trip, like he didn't want anything to do with like hugging, a lot of them except for like Mickey Mouse, because who wouldn't hug him? But he was very like held back. But all of like the princesses, they really got down to like his level, and they would like take their time to talk to him. And like he was like full hugging them at the end. Like I think he has a crush on a couple of them now. Like he was just like he loved it. And so I think that was so special, because in the park sometimes you feel more rushed, like there's a lot of people waiting for characters, and the lineup is long, and like for me, like I never want to hold up the whole line and cause everybody else to wait. So it feels like you're kind of going through faster, where on the cruise, like we had so many special moments where the cast members like remembered us. They remembered like the kids. They would like get down and talk to them, walking, holding their hands. So it was just
I
phenomenal.
think on the ships, because comparatively it's a lot less people on board than in the parks.
Yeah.
They really do, especially for those that do have special needs. I also travel on cruises with my niece who's disabled, both physically and mentally handicapped. And I know by day two, like they all seem to know her, and but same thing, yeah, like
Yeah.
especially the princesses, they do remember you, and they do kind of take those extra few minutes to really
Yeah.
make the experience even that more special for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw a few other, people on the ship, a couple disabilities as well, and just seeing the interactions between the cast members and watching, while we were waiting for our turn was just like, it was just like everybody else, melted away, and it was just like that that was just happening. That was it. Like there was no pressure. Nobody was rushing them, and they were just having their time. And nobody in line felt like, I didn't feel like anybody waiting, any of the other guests were like, angry or trying to rush. Like everybody was just enjoying. Like when we would go up and we would have our turn, like I would hear people behind us like, "Oh, like that's so special." And like they were all happy for us to have that moment. And I think that was really special, because in the parks, you don't get that sometimes. The characters are great and I love them in the parks, but it's just different. They have more time. Like you said, on the cruise, there's less people. They just have that ability to like really connect, which is really awesome.
Cruising is definitely more laid back for sure.
Yeah.
People have time to spend. And actually, Jake and I, in our cruise overview video, we talked about that tip where one parent stands in the line because the line is long, especially for special characters that you may not see typically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the parent swap is kind of the thing to do because, I mean, eventually your kid's going to get antsy no matter what.
Yeah.
So, that's a good tip. I want to know, did you experience the kids clubs and what was your experience with that?
We didn't fully. We did go in for open houses, and whatnot, but we didn't. The kids didn't go in on their own and spend time in there. When we were in there for open houses, like, everybody who was in there was phenomenal, and I have no doubt that they would have had like a superior time. They just weren't at the point where they were, ready and confident enough to go and do that. My son just has a hard time with all of the sort of new things. But when we were in there for open houses, we did have, a few cast members, who came over and were chatting with us. And, you could really tell that they all, they loved their job. They love working with the kids. And I think it would have been great. And I'm hoping over the next, couple cruises, they'll get more used to it. But we did do the Bibbidi Bobbidi boutique with my daughter, who does have some sensory things going on, and she can be, definitely has some struggles sometimes. And so I was really nervous going into that, because I didn't know, how that was going to play out. And again, like all of my nerves were just like gone. They were phenomenal. They were all so, took their time with her, and she was like dead face the whole time. My daughter has like really bad like RIB or R, what is it? You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Resting
Face. Yeah.
RBF.
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, and she was like that the entire like, you would have thought we were, like, torturing her, even though she was having the best time. Like, she loved it, she was so happy, but she was just, like, the whole time and just but, like, they were just, like they kept talking and, like, finally at the end, like, they, like, kind of, like, were, buddy-buddy, and she was, like, warming up to, and was, like, smiling and so happy, and it was so cool, and they actually did, make an accommodation for my son. Usually, they said, "You have to have your bibbidi-bobbidi appointment to come in and get your outfits and stuff done," but, like we had an appointment booked for my son to get the night costume, but he didn't want to after he changed his mind, so we canceled. But then he did want the night costume, so we were like, ugh. So we ended up talking to them and like, hey, like we talked to actually someone in one of the stores the night before, and I was like, do you know, like, can we just buy the night costume when we're there? Like, is it possible? And she was like, "Well, let me call like the manager and see." And so they called and they were like, "Look, we're gonna set the night costume aside for you when you go with your daughter tomorrow. Like it's already gonna be there for your son. Like don't worry about it and whatnot." So we were able to like pick that up for him, and he didn't have to do the experience, which was really nice. So it was just good to know that they do make those kind of like accommodations, and they were so like there was no judgment. They were like, "Yes, like, like, we're gonna put it aside, like, don't worry." And then they were like, "If he wants to come and get some, like, bravery dust and all of that fun stuff, like, just bring him back in his costume and, like, we can do that," which was super cool, so
They really do know how to make things special. I just, like, was about to cry listening to her story, and it reminded me, when we were on a cruise and, um, we went to Bippity Boppity Boutique, and it was my daughter's birthday, and we didn't have an appointment, but she wanted a dress, so we were, like, perusing through the dresses. They let us in and look through the dresses, and she loved all the dresses, and then they found matching shoes for her, and they, like, found her perfect size, you know, and then it was just me, and I was like, "Well, you know what? We're gonna go talk to daddy. We'll see what he says." And they're the fairy godmothers in training, right? So they're like, "Okay, well, we'll keep it aside for you, and we'll see you later." And then I think a couple hours later, we came back to get the dress, and they had it put aside for her. They recognized her walking in, and they like did the whole experience. She put on the dress. They even gave her some pixie dust, let her sit in the chair, and it was just really special. So they really know how to next level everything.
yes, absolutely.
I mean, hearing you, Jen, talk about the cast members on the Wonder. I've mentioned this a couple times on this show that the Wonder is my family's home away from home. We spent a lot of time on that ship, and I know the cast members are largely the reason why we keep going back because they are just amazing, and that's true across the whole fleet. But I think the Wonder, there's something
Absolutely.
really
Yeah.
special for at
It
least for us about the Wonder, and yeah, they really do make it special. And I know that they aren't necessarily trained on any one particular disability, but they do receive, I think across the whole cast, they do receive some training on how to make things more special for those that need it.
Yeah, I agree. I think honestly, I was blown away with just the support, just the care, like the attention to detail with everything. Like our stateroom host, her name is Suda, just like phenomenal. Like she was, you could just tell she cared. Like one night, our kids were like, they crashed early and like she hadn't got to our room yet, and she like I came in later and she was like so apologetic. She's like, I didn't get to make like the little towel animal. She's like, I'm so sorry. She's like, I'm gonna make you two tomorrow. Like she just was like so sweet, and I was like, it's fine, like it's okay. And sure enough, like the next day, there was two, and just sort of everything. I just couldn't even like every detail, every person we interacted with was so just lovely and happy. I had some really good talks with a couple of them who were with the characters while my kids were waiting, and just kind of, chatting about like what they liked about it too. And they all just like loved to be there. Like they all love Disney. They all had that really, and that's where I think too the difference with like some of the non-Disney parks, like in Paris, it's such a different culture. And sometimes I feel like in those parks it's just a job, where, like, in North America, on ships, I do, and, like, in the parks, I do feel like you get those people who, like, you can tell they love Disney. They love what they do. They love making those like extra special memories for people, and it means a lot.
I don't want this to turn into a full cruise episode, but I am curious about your check-in process, how that went, because I know that sometimes that can get a bit frustrating, having to go through the security and all that kind of stuff. So did you prepare beforehand? Was there any sort of special accommodations that you needed? Like, what was the process like?
So when I was talking to cast members, they did say when we got there that I could talk to someone, at the check-in terminal and sort of mention about my son, and if we needed any accommodations or anything like that, they could help us there. They didn't give me any specifics as to what would be accommodated, but they did say like they were there to support us if we needed it. That being said, when we got there, we parked at the terminal. Our port arrival time was 12:45, I think, and we were there at like 12:20, because I like to be, extra early. And I was worried we were gonna have to wait, but by the time we got like upstairs and everything, like we just literally walked through it all. Like there was basically no wait. We pretty much sailed through everything. The only time that it was like a little bit of a wait was just the actual like check-in, and it took maybe like a total 7 minutes, but it felt like 45 minutes because when kids are screaming, it just, elevates the situation. But it was amazing. Getting on was just, it was way different. I thought it was going to be so stressful. I was like prepping for like 3 weeks. I was like going over, like, we're going to have to go through and do all these things, but it was totally fine. The hardest thing for us, probably that there was no accommodations for, that we were told we could anyways, was just doing the safety, the muster drill, and doing, which is something everybody has to do. But the I didn't I knew, but I didn't know maybe. Just when they show like the ship, like the horns and the alarm or whatever, I didn't realize how long it was going to go on for, so I didn't prep my kids for that. So it was like, okay, they're going to do it, and then they just kept, it goes on for like 13 whatever, and it was like they were like not impressed with me because I was like, it'll be like 2 times, it's fine. It was not. So I was not prepared for that, but and then of course it took probably to do that. It was like we were there for a while because a few, I guess some guests, didn't arrive.
It's
Of
always those
course,
people
we're
holding up the line.
sleeping
Yeah.
always. So, it took a little bit, but otherwise that was like the hardest part, and overall it was still really good. So,
And for anybody curious, it's 7 short blasts followed by 1 long blast of the horn's whistle.
thank you.
Yeah, we actually talked about that in the last episode too. To bring, ear protectors for your children, because yeah, it is very, very loud and it's a long way. And depending on where you are, where your muster station is, you could be standing the whole time too.
Oh, we were seated. So I'm
Yeah, most of the
grateful
time
for
you're sitting
that.
out on
Yeah.
the
Yes.
deck there, on the walking track and packed in like sardines as they cram everybody out there. So that's,
Sardines.
the one part of the cruise that's not very fun, but you got to get through. And definitely for prepping kids ahead
Yeah.
of time makes a huge difference.
Prep is key for sure when you're traveling.
We're-
Just with kids,
Anywhere,
anyone,
yeah.
with myself. I'm like, I need prep.
Awesome. So I think we've gone into detail about, I don't know, almost everything you need to know about disability services in the park and on the cruise ship. Do you have any sort of pro tips? Like, what is your best pro tip for people planning such a vacation?
I think it's really just the slow pace. I think a lot of people think Disney has to be, like go, go, go. And that's really overwhelming when you think about bringing like a child or yourself and, you have sensory, overstimulation, anything, any sort of cognitive things going on, it's a lot. And I've had clients, like, do I need Genie Plus and DAS? Like, we want to have a good time. Like, they don't want to miss out. They want to have a good time. And I totally get that, but if you're going and you're going to use the DAS, just use the DAS. Don't put the pressure on like the Genie Plus. Go feel it out. You can always add Genie Plus, like we know, while you're in the parks. But feel it out. A lot of people that I've worked with that have gone and are using the DAS and have the disabilities, with one member or more of their parties, they really appreciate slowing down and just taking their time, going through the park, booking the rides and just having a break midday, finding those quiet spots. I think there's a pressure just in society, there's pressure to like go, go, go all the time. But, Disney doesn't have to be like that. Just sitting, catching the shows, like I recommend a lot of the shows, Disneyland's my home park and, I love, like the Lion King and, going doing the Tiki Room and just all of them, going to Animation Academy and California Adventure, sitting there for a bit. So I try to prep clients to just, even if you're not doing a ride every 20 minutes, that's totally okay. More than likely, if you are doing it, like when we had Genie Plus with my son and we were kind of trying it out with Das, it was too much. Like going back and forth on it's just a lot for him. So just slowing it down, that's ultimately the key, taking the stress off. Like Disney is 100% magical and it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. Everybody's trips are going to be different. If you're traveling with a large group, a small group, older kids, younger kids, it's all different no matter what. So really just taking that pressure off, really finding the time to just sit down, get a churro, like sit on a bench, people watch for a minute. In Toontown, they have like the nice little like grassy area for kids to just kind of run around. That's a great spot. So many spots, tucked back by like Winnie the Pooh. We like to sit back there by Splash. It's usually a lot quieter too. So back there, California Adventure, there's kind of like that path between Avengers and Radiator Springs. That's usually like a quieter area, or like all the way back. There's all those seats next to the, oh my God, I can't think of it, the theater.
Hyperion.
Yes, Hyperion. Thank you. And that's usually not as busy. So, finding just those little areas where you can just like take a breath and just relax, compose yourself, let your kids have an ice cream or a snack or a treat, get a snack for yourself because that's important too. A drink if you want one of those as well, because that's also sometimes important. And just like, yeah, enjoy. And rope drop. That's also always rope drop. Even with like anything, with my son, going in the morning, utilizing that like early time when it's quieter, super helpful too.
Great tips. I think that overarching thing for every sort of tip that we've had so far is to just lay back and, enjoy.
Yeah.
Take it slow, take a break.
Yeah.
That's been the vibe of
Yeah.
our advice for this podcast. So it's awesome that you came on and said exactly the same thing.
Same thing.
I know, I like to say sometimes you can have a magical trip without ever getting on a ride. There's so much to do. So yeah,
Yes.
glad you agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And people, I feel like they just don't know that. They think it's all like rides. I'm like, no, like, girl, sit back. Like, there's so much more to do. Go ride the
Yeah.
trolley. Like, do something else. There's so much.
I definitely get the perspective though when you're spending a lot of money for your trip and you kind of want to get it all done, but that's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure on yourself, give yourself a break.
It
Take
is.
put some more days in there and stretch it out. Take some more
Yes.
time. Takes more
Yeah.
time to explore.
That's another good tip too. I feel like people try to cram everything into like 2 or 3 days to save money, and I'm like, yeah, you are saving whatever a little bit, but you're going to be you could be stressed, if you add the extra, if you have the ability to have, the extra days. For us like 4 or 5 days is like we always try to do that. Even though we all know the park, like we could go through the park and probably do it in like one day and have, hit all of our favorites and like be done. But still, like I just love to just like slow down, enjoy, like we just conquer like little areas. That's our goal, and that works for us. So if you're traveling with, anybody who has, diverse needs and, you want to slow down, spend the extra time in the park. Don't even bother. A lot of people look at like, like Knott's Berry or like Universal and stuff, and those are great if you can fit it in. But like if you can just focus your whole trip on Disney, like you won't be disappointed. It'll be great. I promise.
You're right. You can. It is small, Disneyland. You can do it all in a few days. But yeah, definitely if you can make 5 days work with, adding on an extra couple days to your ticket isn't much, but I know adding more to your hotel and whatnot is a bit extra. But if you have the ability to do so, it's definitely the way to go for Disneyland.
Yeah.
I mean, slowing down at Disney World is kind of a different story. I think, for the many times I've been to Disney World, I haven't done everything. So
Yeah, there's a lot there.
I still recommend slowing down and enjoying everything and not running from place to place. But
I guess probably my final question for you would be, I know they're totally different products, but kind of given that whole just slowing down mentality, between the parks or the cruise, which do you think is, I guess, better for, I mean, like I said, they're totally different, but where do you think is kind of the easiest way to experience the most magic, but still
it's a
experience
tough
the
one.
Disney feel? But I know maybe that's probably an impossible question.
It's tough. I think it's totally different. I think a cruise is probably the easiest to just, like, plan and kind of I think everything's just, like, there's a lot less on your plate, when you're traveling to the parks and, like, for us, when we travel to the parks, we have to factor in, like, the rest time, like, sometimes we stay off-site, sometimes we stay on-site. So if we're off-site, it's further sometimes to walk, to different hotels. So factoring in, like, okay, we have to leave, so we can get to the hotel and come back and blah blah blah. Whereas, like, on a cruise, like, anytime the kids were tired, we were just like, cool, we'll pop to the cabin for, like, a half an hour, whatever. Like, we did that a couple times, and that's way easier. Um, so I think a cruise is probably, like, slightly easier, but I think the DAS really does make, the parks totally something manageable, and they do have, great accommodations there, and it is really, they're two totally different things, and it's hard to to choose at the end of the day.
I
Just do them all,
agree.
do everything.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, just that's it. That's the
I bet
answer.
somebody at a Disneyland park restaurant, a cast member, would probably pick out the broccoli for you too.
Yeah, honestly. Then they made, like, I'm sure that you've seen it with your kids. They made, like, the little ketchup, like, Mickeys.
Yeah.
And then my daughter was like she was, like, so pissed. She's like, "That's not Minnie Mouse. She needs a bow." And she was, like, trying to get our server to, like, do a ketchup bow on the Mickey Mouse. I was like, Girl, just take the Mickey Mouse ketchup." And, like, our poor server, he was gonna try. Like, he was honestly gonna try to make a bow out of ketchup. And I was like, you don't have to do that. It's okay." So they really, I mean, I think, yeah, the cruise is just, like, next level. But at the parks, they probably would, pick out the broccoli and stuff. It's just me who does it usually.
Yeah, that was a hard comparison,
I
Jake.
regret
You
asking.
threw that at her.
That
She's
was a
never
I
going
hard
to
know.
come on
question.
our
Scared her
podcast
off.
again.
Yeah, I'm gone. I feel like the only other thing, that I would mention when it comes to the DAS pass is, like I mentioned, there is sort of that pre-registration. I would really, make sure I encourage all my clients to do it, because I think a lot of people, if you are counting on DAS and then you don't pre-register for it and you go to City Hall and you get, denied, it could be really like a total curveball into your whole trip.
Right.
So I think really doing that pre-registration, because then you can figure out if, for whatever reason, if you get denied, you can kind of talk about alternatives, with your travel agent or whoever. So I think that's really important. I think, I've had some guests who choose to do it at the park, which is fine, but just I think it's a good thing. I'm a planner, so I guess that's why, but I think it's better to have that knowledge whether you're approved or not as far in advance as you can, so you can make sure you've got your stuff set up.
Well, Jen, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything. I know I've learned a ton.
Well, thanks for having me. This is so fun. You guys are great.
Fun times over here.
Yeah, I like it. I'll come back anytime.
We're going to hold you to
Woohoo.
that.
Okay, all right.
Well, that does it for this episode of Planning the Magic. Feel free to, or we invite you to like and subscribe everywhere you find podcasts and on YouTube. And we will, of course, link all of Jen's info as well. So if you have any questions, you want to reach out to her, I know she'd love to work with you as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you want to connect with us a little bit more, join us in our Facebook group, ask us questions in there. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Bye,
see you real
guys.
soon.
Bye.